So we were supposed to start with alcohols. Alcohols is going to be the next homologous series. So ethanol is one of the best known organic compounds. Ethanol is the common drinkable alcohol. Let me explain something over here, that not all alcohols are drinkable. Only ethanol is the known drinkable alcohol. Okay? It is just one of a whole family of compounds, the alcohols. Alcohol is a homologous series that contains OH as the functional group, right? OH is going to be the functional group over here. A functional group is a group of atoms in a structure that determines the characteristic reactions of a compound. This is a definition that we have already studied before. So the table below shows the molecular formulae of the series. Let's go with the table. This is the table. This shows the simplest series of the simplest alcohols: methanol, ethanol, propan 1-ol, butanol, pentan 1-ol, and the simplest of alcohols. Now, the simplest alcohols contain one carbon atom, and it is called methanol. Note that all the names have the same ending, ol, as the suffix of alcohol was ol, that I explained before during the nomenclature. Okay. The general formula of alcohols is CnH2n plus 1 OH, which means out of alkanes, we'll take out one hydrogen atom and we'll replace it with OH, the functional group of alcohol. Hence, we can make the alcohol. Take a look. This structure is pretty similar to a methane structure, except that one hydrogen has been removed and OH has been added to the structure. Hence, from methane, methanol. From ethane, one hydrogen has been removed and OH has been added as a functional group to the structure, hence not ethane, ethanol. Okay. As these alcohols are based upon alkanes, which means the entire carbon chain structure in this portion is singly bonded, so it will have the prefix meth or eth or prop. It will have the letters of AN, methane, ethane, propan, butane, as you can see in front of you. So this is because it belongs partially belongs to alkane, the chain. Because why? Because they're all singly bonded in the structure. There is no double or triple bond in the structure. Hence, as written over here, let me use the spotlight over here. Hence, as written over here, they can be referred to as alkanols, which means the alkanes, but one hydrogen has been replaced with the functional group of alcohol, that is OH, hence alkanols. And names are named in the same way: ethanol, methanol, propanol, butanol, or propan 1-ol or butan 1-ol to be precise. Clear? Are we clear with the structure and name? Alkanol?
Yes, sir.
Good. Then the last two lines over here, take a look. These lines actually tell us the properties, the physical properties of alcohols. Please mark in numbers the physical properties. Early alcohols are all neutral. First property. They're colorless. Second, liquids at room temperature. Third, and do not conduct electricity. Fourth. These are the four physical properties of early alcohols, which has been a common question in past papers, be it the MCQ
early
paper or the
alcohol का क्या
extended
मतलब
paper.
है?
Sorry?
Early alcohol.
The first few ones, the simplest ones. Remember, in case of alkanes, alkenes, and alkynes, the first few was the gases, the next were liquids, and then the solids. In case of alcohols, the first few are liquids. They do not discuss the rest of them or their states of matter for that purpose.
अल्कोहल सॉलिड भी होते हैं?
जी हो सकते हैं.
उससे हमने इनके साथ लिखना है टेबल पे कि मेल्टिंग पॉइंट भी और डेंसिटी भी इंक्रीज होती है बॉइलिंग पॉइंट के साथ.
कहाँ पर? Yes, yes, at the bottom of the table. Yes. If you come to table 10.4, yeah, melting point, boiling point, and density, all three of them increase. This should be written over here. Any other questions? Are we all clear?
Yes.
Okay, good, good. So These were the physical properties. Defining alcohols, it's a series of compounds, organic compounds, and we can also call it a homologous series containing the functional group OH and the general formula CnH2n plus 1 OH. Clear?
सर OH हर जो भी स्ट्रक्चर होगा उसमें सिर्फ एक ही होंगे, मतलब OH ज्यादा नहीं हो सकते?
गुड क्वेश्चन। OH ज्यादा भी हो सकते हैं, लेकिन इस तरह के स्ट्रक्चर पे डिफरेंट टाइप का अल्कोहल हो जाता है, ठीक है। मसलन एक में अगर दो OH ग्रुप आ जाए एक ही स्ट्रक्चर में, तो हम उसे सिंपल अल्कोहल नहीं बल्कि डायोल बुलाते हैं। Di stands for two, and ol is actually the suffix for alcohol, means an alcohol that contains two alcoholic groups or functional groups or OH. ठीक है। इसी तरह triol, tetraols, different names, but according to the requirement of IGCSE, we do not consider anything except the simple alcohols and the diols. We are going to consider diols in chapter number 11. ठीक है। Are we clear, Ayan?
तो उनका जनरल फॉर्मूला भी फिर डिफरेंट हो जाएगा?
Of course, उनका जनरल फॉर्मूला इस तरह से जनरलाइज नहीं किया जाता है। जनरलाइज सिर्फ सिंपलर कंपाउंड्स को किया जाता है फॉर स्टूडेंट स्टडी, ठीक है। बड़ी कंपाउंड्स को जनरलाइज करने का मेथड और होता है, फिर डिफरेंट स्टेप्स में हमारे पास डिफरेंट मेथड्स इंट्रोड्यूस हो जाते हैं, ऑफ कोर्स।
ओके,
ठीक है।
यस सर।
Okay, now these are the compounds, the structures that are considered in exams. So in case of alcohols, starting from methanol going all the way to pentanol, that's about it. These would be considered in exams. Anything beyond pentanol is not considered in exams for its structure or for isomerism. Now take a look. For isomerism, both butane 1-ol and butane 2-ol have been considered. Take a look. In butane 1-ol, the alcoholic group, actually OH, is present on the corner carbon, right-hand side. If it's on left-hand side or right-hand side, it doesn't matter because we start the numbering from the same side the functional group is at. Take a look at butane 2-ol. In that case, if we start numbering from right-hand side, it's present in the second carbon. And that's why we start numbering from right-hand side. Hence butane 2-ol. Now, here the name clicks for many things at the time. But stands for 4 carbon atoms in the structure. An stands for all carbon atoms being singly bonded. 2 stands for the position of the functional group or the OH. Ol stands for the functional group OH itself, telling that it is an alcohol. Hence, every part of the name has a meaning over here. Ji Shazib?
मेथनॉल और एथेनॉल में हमने नंबर की नहीं लिखा था, लिख सकते हैं क्या उसमें भी?
Number लिखने या ना लिखने से कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. It's too simple. Remember, Shazib, in algebra, in mathematics, we use for unknown materials the symbol X or symbol Y or symbol Z. If the value of X is 2, 2 is written ahead of it, actually before it, sorry. If the value is 3, it can be written as 3x. But if the value is 1, we usually don't write 1. We keep it simple, simply X, right? So in case of methanol and ethanol, the numbering doesn't matter because there are no more positions than 1 carbon atom or 2 carbon atoms respectively. Hence, there is no need for number 1 over there. Number 1 starts from propanol. Hence, propan 1-ol or propan 2-ol or butane 1-ol or butane 2-ol.
सर OH की पोजीशन मतलब अगर चेंज कर लें स्ट्रक्चर में तो फिर से फर्क पड़ेगा?
Sorry, OH की पोजीशन क्या कर लें?
मतलब सर अगर हमने यहाँ पे ब्यूटेनॉल में हमने OH की पोजीशन है वो कॉर्नर कार्बन के साथ है, हम उसको कॉर्नर कार्बन से साथ हटा के अगर टर्मिनल कार्बन के साथ टर्मिनल हाइड्रोजन के साथ लगा देते हैं.
Beta hydrogen cannot make 2 bonds. It can only make 1 bond. How would hydrogen make 2 bonds? It has only 1 electron to share. Got the point?
Yes, sir.
Huh. If you change the position in terms of in respect of carbon, yes, of course, the name is going to change. It will be a different compound, hence the word isomer. Okay? For example, butane 1-ol and butane 2-ol are isomers to one another. However, you cannot connect it to a hydrogen already connected to a structure because hydrogen cannot make more than one bond. I hope that's clear. Okay. Any more questions before we finish up these alcohols, their physical properties, nomenclature, and isomerism, and move on to the next part? Because these are 4 parts in here. The basic introduction of alcohols, the nomenclature of alcohols, the isomerism of early alcohols or the first few alcohols, simple alcohols as we call them.
सर ये फिर एल्कलाइन होगी कि OH है?
No, beta, actually, no, it's the opposite. Alcohols are slightly acidic. Why? Because the alkalinity OH actually stands for an ine, because that can act as an ine, hence an inorganic structure. Here we are talking about organic structures. Organic structures behave somewhat differently in this case, so it won't be alkaline in nature. Alcohols are actually very, very slightly acidic in nature. Very slightly, but they are acidic in nature. Instead of losing the whole OH bond or OH as a group as an ine, they only lose H positive. And that's sometimes in specific reactions, which is, by the way, beyond the requirements of IGCSE. Clear, Shazid?
Yes, sir.
Any more questions? All right. So moving on, making of ethanol. Now, in case of alkenes or alkynes, I mean the hydrocarbons, as they're usually taken out from the Earth's crust, making of hydrocarbons was not a headache. However, in case of alcohols, it's not as naturally found as to be dug out from Earth's crust or in other cases. So we make alcohol. Clear? That's why manufacturing of alcohol is a proper heading over here and a proper portion over here. And this goes for the rest of the compounds that are not actually available from Earth's crust directly, which includes acids as well. In case of acids, we have a few sources, but in case of esters, we also have a few sources, but we also make them industrially. Same goes with alcohols. We have a few sources, natural sources, but those sources are too short to be handled on large scales. So we make them or we manufacture them industrially.
मतलब सर एल्केन और एल्कीन्स जो हैं वो नेचुरली फाउंड हो सकते हैं?
Alkanes, alkenes और alkynes सारे naturally found हैं. Actually, Earth's crust से dig out किए जाते हैं petrol के साथ. Petrol itself is an alkane. ठीक है, ये हम चैप्टर नंबर 11 के स्टार्ट में पढ़ेंगे डिटेल में. वो नेचुरली फाउंड हैं और इतनी लार्ज अमाउंट्स में मिलते हैं कि ह्यूमंस को अल्केन्स, अल्कीन्स, अल्काइंस जो हैं वो इंडस्ट्रियली मैन्युफैक्चर करने की जरूरत नहीं है. Well, for the rest of the homologous series of this chapter, acids, alcohols, and esters, they are found naturally, but there is a problem that the amounts cannot be dealt on a large scale. So what do? We manufacture them industrially. Okay. So for their manufacturing, actually, to make ethanol, we have a couple of methods. Both of the methods are discussed over here. The first is hydration of ethene. If I go one page back, you would see that hydration of ethene was a topic. We've already discussed this topic, how to use ethene, react it with steam, form ethanol, at 300 degrees centigrade at 60 atmospheric with immobilized phosphoric acid that is absorbed on silica pellets as a catalyst. That means all of this has been studied before, right? So moving on to this paragraph, you would see the same equation, the same set of conditions, the same catalyst, and everything over here in the first paragraph. The paragraph before the reaction is same. However, the paragraph after the reaction consists of uses of alcohol, ethanol. So please mark it as uses of ethanol. Ethanol is an important solvent, raw material to make other chemicals. For example, ethanol is also used as a solvent, and it is used to make paints, glues, perfumes, aftershaves, etc. Uses of alcohol, uses of ethanol actually. Please mark them. This has also been a question in past papers, but this is considered as an easier question. You only list the uses and that's about it. A maximum couple of marks. Moving on to the second method. Are we clear about the first method, hydration of ethene, or do I need to repeat it? Class?
Yes, sir.
Do I need to repeat it or it's good? Shall we move on to fermentation?
Repeat करने.
Okay, good, good.
Yes,
Take
sir.
care.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So moving on to fermentation. Fermentation is one of the oldest methods of forming ethanol. ठीक है, हम चूंकि कॉमन ड्रिंकेबल अल्कोहल की शराब की बात कर रहे हैं, पी जाने वाली शराब की बात कर रहे हैं, जो कि बहुत सदियों से सेंचुरी से बनाई जा रही है, तो हाइड्रेशन ऑफ इथेन जो है वो हार्डली 100-150 इयर्स ओल्ड प्रोसेस है. उससे पहले दुनिया में जितनी भी शराब बनाई जाती रही है वो सारी की सारी फर्मेंटेशन के प्रोसेस से बनाती रही है. So fermentation is considered as a very important process. Your book dedicates about 2.5 pages for this process alone. ठीक है, और हम इसे अच्छी खासी डिटेल में डिस्कस करने वाले हैं. ठीक है, let's give next 20 minutes to this entire process just to make sure that you get every part of the process. ठीक. Ethanol and carbon dioxide are actually the natural waste products of yeast when they ferment sugar. Yeast is actually a type of fungi. Okay. I hope you have studied fungi in your biology lessons, single-celled organism, a specific type which can actually properly live. And when they consume any sugar, for which we use the word ferment sugar, okay, they produce natural waste. Like humans produce natural waste in the form of liquid, gas, and solid, they produce natural waste in the form of ethanol and carbon dioxide. These single-celled organisms, fungi, which we call yeast, is specific. So sugar is present in all fruits and grains, in the sap, in the nectar of plants. I hope you're familiar with sap and nectar from biology. If you're not, let me know so I can explain them.
तो वैक्यूल में होता है ना सैप तो.
Right, and what about nectar?
तो flowers जिसमें bee वगैरह उनसे है ना.
Flowers में. It's actually, nectar is actually very sweet and bees are attracted to this nectar. Okay. You can say nectar is actually the raw material for making honey because bee then extract this nectar and use it to make honey, right? Yeasts are found everywhere on the planet. Okay. The ancient Babylonians and Egyptians found that if they crushed grapes or germinated grain, the paste would bubble and produce an intoxicating drink. I mean, alcoholic drink. Okay. Louis Pasteur discovered that yeast are single-cell living fungi. They ferment sugar to gain energy by anaerobic respiration, I think, which is pretty well explained in biology book. But quickly skimming through anaerobic respiration, respiration is of two types, aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic requires oxygen, anaerobic does not require oxygen. These single-cell living fungi actually do not require oxygen to breathe in. They can simply take up sugar or carbohydrates and go for fermentation for them. And by anaerobic respiration, they can use up that sugar to gain energy, and in turn, they're going to produce two waste products. One of them is ethanol, the other one is carbon dioxide. I hope you're familiar with anaerobic respiration. Do we need to discuss anaerobic respiration in any more detail? It's actually not required by our book, but if you don't understand, we can always discuss it.
नहीं पता है पहले से.
Okay, good, good. So as ethanol is toxic to yeast, this is very important. This has been a question in past paper way too many times. Ethanol itself, the byproduct, is toxic to yeast. The fungi producing the ethanol is killed by ethanol itself. So the fermentation is self-limiting, which means fermentation stops after a while. ठीक है? वो yeast sugar खाना शुरू करता है, हम इसे ferment बुलाते हैं, fermentation of sugar, और वो वेस्ट प्रोडक्ट प्रोड्यूस करता है एथनॉल. वो एथनॉल उसी यीस्ट को मारने के लिए, खत्म करने के लिए काफी होता है. तो ऑटोमेटिकली फर्मेंटेशन कुछ ही टाइम के बाद शुरू होते ही खत्म हो जाती. क्यों? क्योंकि यीस्ट जो होता है वो एथनॉल की प्रेजेंस की वजह से मर जाता है. So once the ethanol concentration has reached about 14% or the sugar runs out, the multiplying yeast die and the fermentation ends. The best temperature for carrying out the process is 37 degrees centigrade, the same as for human body temperature. I hope you remember that from biology. So the reaction is catalyzed by enzymes in the yeast. Take a look. Glucose is the most basic carbohydrate that we can discuss, or most basic sugar that we can discuss in biology. See, glucose in the presence of yeast would be converted into yeast waste products, ethanol and carbon dioxide respectively. The formulas are given over here. Take a look. Glucose has been used as in the form of a solution. The enzymes present in yeast or yeast itself is good enough to be able to convert it into ethanol, 2 molecules of ethanol and 2 molecules of carbon dioxide. The ethanol, which is toxic to yeast, kills yeast at about 14%. Hence, the reaction stops. About 14% of the glucose is converted into ethanol and carbon dioxide, and that's about it. The next paragraph is a paragraph which is usually not considered for any countries where drinking alcohol is forbidden by culture or by religion. So this paragraph is not considered for Pakistan. However, we're going to go with the paragraph. Alcoholic drinks such as beer and wine are made on large scale in vast quantities in copper or steel fermentation vats. Okay? Fermentation vats are actually bigger, larger vessels for fermentation purposes. Beer is made from barley with hops and other ingredients added to produce distinctive flavors. Wine is made by fermenting grape juice. Beer contains about 4% by volume of ethanol. The rest is water and other materials. Okay? Whereas wine contains about 8 to 14% alcohol. Stronger, more alcoholic drinks are made in one of the two ways. Fortified wines such as sherry and port, these are the names of different types of alcohols, have pure ethanol added to them. Spirits such as whiskey, brandy, and vodka are made by distillation in which they contain higher amounts of alcohol. Right? This whole paragraph doesn't go for Pakistan. They will not ask you any questions about this paragraph. Okay? So fermentation can be carried out in laboratory using the apparatus given in the bottom diagram. This whole big jar, we're going to study it. The airlock allows the gas to escape from the vessel but prevents airborne bacteria entering. Take a look. This vessel is pretty simple. We use a glass vessel because it's see-through and we can see what's happening inside it. As soon as the bubbles start producing, that means the yeast has started fermenting sugar and converting into carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a gas which bubbles out of the system. Now, we put up a cork over this big large vessel, and out of this cork, we have an airlock containing water. This airlock allows carbon dioxide to move outside, all right? Because carbon dioxide is soluble in water, it dissolves over here and goes out from here. As the concentration of carbon dioxide increases over here, it moves from the other side outwards. However, if we discuss two things over here, number one, oxygen. Oxygen is not that much soluble in water. So movement of oxygen from this side all the way inside the jar, the chances are very less. Okay? So the anaerobic respiration will not be converted into aerobic respiration. One. Two, It prevents airborne bacteria from entering over here, as airborne bacteria cannot enter over here, hence they will not be able to go with aerobic respiration. Remember, we're talking about fungi over here for anaerobic respiration, but at the same time, if bacteria enters the system, it would start for aerobic respiration, number one. Number two, the bacteria can then allow the entire system to be deteriorated for human use. Means you won't be able to drink any alcohol if there is too much bacteria in it, because that can make you sick. I hope everyone in the class understands the purpose for airlock containing water, because that has been a very important question in past paper exams. Moving on, comparing the methods of ethanol production. Now, we have discussed two methods for ethanol production. One of them was the hydration of ethene. The other one is fermentation. Now, the ethanol produced by fermentation comes from a renewable resource, which means the grains, the sugar canes, the fruits, which come year after year as a part of the crop. When a fuel is used, ethanol produced in this way is potentially carbon neutral, because the carbon released during fermentation is used by burning the fuel or by using the photosynthesis process when the crop grows again. We call it carbon neutral. The term carbon neutral means the carbon dioxide produced out from a system is actually used for the manufacturing of system or for the provision of system itself. Let's suppose आपने sugar cane लिया है, उसको ferment करके आपने alcohol बनाया, उसने एक specific amount में carbon dioxide produce किया है. हम जानते हैं कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड पोल्यूशन की तरफ जा सकता है फॉर अ पर्पस ऑफ ग्लोबल वार्मिंग. सो कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड एक कंसर्न बन जाता है, ठीक है. लेकिन किसी ऐसे सिस्टम में जिस सिस्टम को प्रोड्यूस करने के लिए कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड एज अ रिएक्टेंट यूज हुआ हो, बिकॉज शुगर केन की प्रोडक्शन के लिए फोटोसिंथेसिस रिक्वायर्ड है, और फोटोसिंथेसिस में कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड जो होता है वो एक रिएक्टेंट के तौर पे बिहेव करता है. So we say कि जितना ethanol fermentation में हमारे पास कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड रिलीज हुआ होगा, उतना ही कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड एब्जॉर्ब हो गया होगा उस सिस्टम को, उस ग्लूकोज सोर्स को बनाने में फोटोसिंथेसिस के प्रोसेस में जितना रिलीज हुआ है. Hence we use the term carbon neutral. Do we understand what the term carbon neutral means? Any questions, class?
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay. So if we do understand what carbon neutral means, the last part for today is this table. All right. This table considers both of the processes, ethanol made by hydration of ethene or ethanol made by fermentation. Now, this table includes for both processes their advantages and disadvantages. So what I want you to do is to note down over here that every advantage would be considered as A. Sorry, A is equal to advantage, okay, and D is equal to disadvantage. Take. So what we are going to do is that we are going to mark in this table which point is an advantage and which point is a disadvantage. We do that in order to answer the questions properly in exams, because in exams they do not simply ask you to compare these processes. They may ask you a specific advantage or a disadvantage of any of the processes. So you should be able to do that. Clear? So what you are going to do is that you are going to write A or D ahead of these processes. ठीक है? हर सेल के आगे आप A या D लिख लेंगे. A का मतलब है ये उस प्रोसेस का एडवांटेज है और D का मतलब है ये उस प्रोसेस का डिसएडवांटेज है. Let's start from the first row. Ethanol by hydration of ethene originates from a non-renewable resource, petroleum. इथीन जो होता है वो पेट्रोलियम सोर्स से आता है, एक नॉन रिन्यूएबल रिसोर्स है. हम एक दफा जमीन से खोद कर वहां से फ्यूल निकाल लेते हैं तो वो खत्म हो जाता है, वो रिसोर्स यूज अप हो जाता है. तो ये एक नॉन रिन्यूएबल रिसोर्स है, which is basically a disadvantage. So this first cell is a disadvantage for this process. However, on the side for fermentation, these are made from readily renewable resources. Readily renewable resources are the resources that can be renewed after a specific period of time. जैसे sugarcane की crop है, एक साल हुई है, अगले साल फिर वो crop हो जाएगी, if the time and conditions are right, उससे अगले साल फिर वो आ जाएगी, तो वो crop तो renew होती रहेगी. ठीक है, यानी वो रिन्यूएबल है, लेकिन पेट्रोलियम सोर्स रिन्यूएबल नहीं है. It took billions of years for these petroleum sources to gather up in the Earth's crust. ठीक है, और हम एक और बिलियन ईयर्स के लिए वेट नहीं कर सकते हैं कि उतनी रिसोर्सेज दोबारा डेवलप हो जाएं. राइट? So petroleum, non-renewable resource disadvantage, readily renewable resource advantage. This one is D, this one is A. Moving on, ethanol by hydration of ethene is a small-scale equipment capable of withstanding pressure. This is a disadvantage. हमें ऐसा इक्विपमेंट बनाना पड़ेगा जो प्रेशर को विदस्टैंड कर सकता है. आपको याद होगा हमने 60 एटमॉस्फेरिक का प्रेशर यूज किया, तो इतने प्रेशर के लिए तो हमें बाकायदा इक्विपमेंट बनाना पड़ता है. आप देखिए घर में हम जो प्रेशर कुकर इस्तेमाल करते हैं वो सिर्फ 2 ATM का होता है, 1 से बढ़ा के 2. उसको भी बाकायदा हमें मार्केट से जाकर परचेज करना पड़ता है, which is around 5 to 10,000 rupees. So इसका मतलब है कि 60 एटमॉस्फेरिक का हमने कोई बनाना है चीज, तो हमें डेफिनेटली उसके लिए भी कोई ऐसा इक्विपमेंट बनाना पड़ेगा, which is going to cost capital, hence disadvantage. On the other hand, for fermentation, these are used simply large vessels. बड़े-बड़े vessels, बड़े-बड़े vats use कर लेते हैं. ये इस डायग्राम में तो बड़े अच्छे ग्लास वेसल्स दिखाए हैं. अगर आप पाकिस्तान के पुराने गांव के तरीकों की बात करें तो पुराने जमाने में मिट्टी के बने हुए बर्तन होते थे, जिनके लिए हम उर्दू में लफ्ज इस्तेमाल करते हैं मर्तबान. ठीक है, वो मिट्टी का बना हुआ बड़ा सारा बर्तन होता है, इवन ट्रांसपेरेंट या सी थ्रू भी नहीं होता, लेकिन बड़ा सारा लार्ज वेसल लिया और उसे यूज कर लिया. ठीक. सो थर्ड, for ethanol by hydration of ethene, it's a continuous process, a process that keeps going on, that never stops. ठीक है, जब तक आपके पास रिएक्टेंट्स है प्रोसेस चलता रहेगा. अगर आपके पास रिएक्टेंट्स 10 साल तक पड़े, प्रोसेस 10 साल तक चलता रहेगा, which is an advantage. This is the first advantage for ethanol by the reaction of hydration of ethene. इसके लिए पहला एडवांटेज है. अभी तक हमने इसके सिर्फ डिसएडवांटेजेस पढ़े थे.
लेकिन
जी,
ओ वाटर को स्टीम के फॉर्म में रखने के लिए कोई हीट नहीं देनी होती क्या?
हाँ, और वो हीट सिंपली जो ना फ्यूल को बर्न करने से आती रहती है. फ्यूल लगाते जाए वो आता जाएगा. मतलब जब तक आपके पास रिएक्टेंट्स और फ्यूल है, प्रोसेस चलता रहेगा. और इंडस्ट्री के पास इतने खुले पैसे होते हैं कि उसने अगले 5 साल 10 साल के लिए अपने फ्यूल्स और अपने रिएक्टेंट्स प्लान किए होते हैं. सो प्रोसेस चलते रहते हैं. लेट मी टेल यू, ये जो इंडस्ट्री होती है जो अल्कोहल प्रोड्यूस करती है, इसे हम अपनी लैंग्वेज में डिस्टिलरी कहते हैं. डिस्टिलरी, a process that consists of distillation. ठीक है, क्यों डिस्टिलेशन होती है ये भी हम आगे चल के देखते हैं, मैं ये बात क्लियर करूंगा. ठीक है, सो हम उसे डिस्टिलरी बताते हैं. डिस्टिलरी जो होती है वो तकरीबन वर्क करती रहती है अप्रोक्सीमेटली फ्रॉम आउट ऑफ 365 days in a year, it works for like 340 to 350 days a year. वो जो 10-15 दिन बाकी बचते हैं उसमें बस मशीन को स्टॉप करके मशीन पार्ट्स को अच्छी तरह से क्लीन अप किया जाता है, साफ किया जाता है और रीस्टार्ट कर दिया जाता है. 10 to 15 days are required for that. In some cases only 5 to 7 days are enough. बाकी पूरा साल 24 hours a day 7 days a week वो चलती रहती है. ठीक, आयान आप कुछ पूछ रहे थे.
The second advantage is
सेकेंड, हाइड्रेशन ऑफ एथीन में डिसएडवांटेज है और फर्मेंटेशन में एडवांटेज है. यानी रिलेटिवली सिंपल लार्ज वेसल्स एडवांटेज है और लेफ्ट साइड पे डिसएडवांटेज है. थर्ड वाला कंटिन्यूअस प्रोसेस एडवांटेज है और बैच प्रोसेस डिसएडवांटेज है.
सर स्मॉल स्केल इक्विपमेंट तो सर एडवांटेज होगा. मतलब सर मैं
बेटा विथस्टैंड प्रेशर भी लिखा हुआ है आगे. आधी नहीं पढ़नी, आधा सेंटेंस नहीं पढ़ना, पूरा सेंटेंस पढ़ना है. और प्रेशर कितना है? 60 एटमॉस्फेरिक. मैंने आपको बताया घरों में जो प्रेशर कुकर होते हैं वो सिर्फ 2 एटमॉस्फेरिक होते हैं. 1 नॉर्मल प्रेशर है, वो सिर्फ 1 से बढ़ा के 2 होते हैं, तो आप उसका 5 से 10,000 रुपया भरते हैं. राइट, जो 2 एटमॉस्फेरिक की वजह 60 एटमॉस्फेरिक को विथस्टैंड कर सकता होगा. आपके ख्याल में वो कितना होगा? 1-2 हज़ार का नहीं, ऑफ कोर्स इट्स गोइंग टू कॉस्ट मनी. दूसरी तरफ क्या है? मर्तबान. आपको पता है मर्तबान कितने का होता है? 400 रुपए का मुश्किल, बड़े से बड़ा मर्तबान भी. On one side, I'm talking about 10,000. On the other, I'm talking about hardly 200 to 400 rupees. So, of course, you know which one is a disadvantage and which one is an advantage. Easy enough. मुझे आपको करंट मार्केट रेट्स बताने पड़ेंगे क्लियर आउट करने के लिए. Okay, if we're clear, let's move on to the point. A batch process. Batch किसे कहते हैं? एक ऐसा process जिसे आप एक दफा start करते हैं, finish करते हैं, फिर उस पूरे process को restart करने की जरूरत होती है. For example, in IGCSE आप लोग batches में pair होते हैं. एक साल में एक बैच हमारा पेयर होता है. जब वो पास आउट कर जाता है तो फिर हमारा नेक्स्ट बैच आ जाता है, फिर अगले साल नया बैच आता है. हम हर साल प्रोसेस रीस्टार्ट करते हैं, बैचेस में प्रोसेस को पूरा करते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, आप हमारे पास जो होंगे, आप 2021 का बैच होंगे हमारे पास, यानी ऐसा बैच जो 2021 में पास आउट होगा. ठीक. सो वी नीड टू स्टार्ट द होल प्रोसेस अगेन. जब अगली क्लास आती है तो वो हम C3 का सारा वो प्रोसेस दोबारा से शुरू करते हैं, वही वाले चैप्टर्स दोबारा पढ़ाते हैं, वही वाले पेपर्स दोबारा प्रैक्टिस कराते हैं, फिर वो प्रोसेस होता है, which is considered a disadvantage. In processing, continuous process is always considered an advantage as compared to a batch process. A batch process is always considered as a disadvantage. Clear हो गया? अगले पे चलते हैं, हमारे पास टाइम कम है, ठीक है. In case of hydration of ethene, it has a very fast reaction rate. ठीक है. Fermentation, however, is a relatively slow process. हमारे यहाँ पाकिस्तान में जो शुगर केन की फर्मेंटेशन की जाती है वो roughly 58 to 60 days लगाती है actual ethanol produce करने में. 60 days. It's a very long process. However, जो दूसरी इंडस्ट्री है वो 60 days में पता नहीं कितने 1000 या million tons का alcohol produce कर चुकी होती है. Right? So fast reaction rate, an advantage, relatively slow process, a disadvantage. क्लास खत्म होने में चंद सेकंड रहते हैं, हम नेक्स्ट 2 पॉइंट्स कल के लिए रख लेते हैं. ठीक है क्लास?
सर ठीक है.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
ओके. टेक केयर स्टूडेंट्स. अल्लाह हाफिज.
Allah Hafiz.
हाफिज.